I said, it's going to be recorded. There's going to be opportunity for you to ask questions. Kiara's going to maybe even answer some of them on the chat, and we'll also verbalise some of the answers as well. We've done a Sydney webinar similar to this one. It's recorded. If you haven't seen it, it's another good one to look at. We can send it to you along with the follow-up from this one as well. Really good turnout for this, or really good registration numbers for this. We had over 100 educators interested to see this webinar tonight. About 25 of them, quarter, are unavailable. But as I said, it's all being recorded. You can relive it in your own time. So without further ado, here we go. We're going to introduce ourselves.
So my name's Kiara. I work in the global team here in the UK with Rowan, but he is actually not here in London normally. So lucky us, we have him here in the office. I've been working in the global team for about a year now, helping educators, particularly from Ireland, in moving to Australia, which has been fantastic and very exciting. My roles before this actually was a teacher, secondary teacher in Australia, and worked with ANZ UK myself, so can actually speak from experience when sending you guys across the big pond. So yeah, that's my personal experience, and it's been a fabulous year so far. So excited to hopefully send all you guys over as well.
It has whizzed by. Yeah, so I'm usually in Copenhagen in Denmark. I've just got off the big tin bird myself here in London and spending a day or two with the team, which is great. My background is I'm a teacher as well. I'm from Central Victoria in Australia. I have got teaching experience in Australian schools, in British schools. I came over here as soon as I graduated and worked in a bunch of schools, and also in Sweden at international schools there. So I've got a lot of relocation experience, I guess. I know what it means to pack up your bag, your life into 23 kilograms and move to the other side of the world, away from family and friends, maybe traveling by yourself, maybe traveling with a group, maybe going for a year or longer. So we're going to unpack not everything tonight. We usually have a generic webinar where we talk about everything about Australia, but this time we're focusing on one of the most livable cities in the world. Yeah, both of us from that city, Melbourne, and have very fond memories and very fond things to say about it. So we are not getting paid by the Melbourne City Council to say these things. We genuinely think what we're going to say about Melbourne. Right, Kiara?
Yeah, we believe it. We lived it. It's all coming from a heart. So what we'll be covering today is basically, as we've said, about living and working in Melbourne, the best city in Australia, and as voted many times, like I think 10 times the most livable city in the world. We'll also be covering how to register to teach in the Victoria, which is the state that Melbourne's in, because in Australia it is different from each state to state, which you might have not known before this. We are going to go through how we can help you before leaving for Australia, what it's like living in Melbourne, the types of work that we offer you while you're there, whether that be in the city or whether you look at going rural for a bit, or regional as well, and what it's like working within those schools and how that might translate from your experience wherever you're tuning in from, whether it be the UK or Ireland or Europe. And we'll talk a bit about the events that we do and how we support as a global traveller, not just a teacher, but also as a person moving abroad, and how you can go and meet new people and things like that.
And it's not just about finding you the job, which is, we do all the legwork, getting you the work, but it's also about making sure you're living with the right type of people, you're working in the right types of settings, you're doing what you want on the weekends and the term breaks. And this whole adventure you're about to embark on is everything and more of what you want it to be. So I always think the work is a very small part of it. You obviously need to work to survive in Australia. It's not the cheapest place to live, particularly Melbourne, but we'll talk a bit about some hacks and some advice around how to do that.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't do it right. There we go. Sorry.
Will I take this one?
Yeah, you take it. You're the big dog on this one.
Well, I won't spend too much time. I don't want to go through. I don't want to bore you to death, but ANZ UK has been around for about 20 years. Started in a shed in a garage in Melbourne. Two guys started it and sending Australian teachers to the UK, and then it evolved into this bigger beast of teachers going to Australia from the UK and other parts of the world too. So we've got a lot of history of helping traveling educators between countries, whether we have offices in those countries or not. We definitely have, well, we have offices all over America,
Yeah.
Canada, UK, but absolutely Australia. That's where you'll be going.
And New Zealand.
New Zealand, and then home offices. Obviously I've got one in Denmark, but also regional parts of Australia. We have offices too. So far-reaching, and we've been doing it for a while, and most of our team have travelled internationally too, and are teachers, so can really empathise with the anxieties and the concerns someone might have, and their parents might have, of traveling overseas and living and working in a different country.
Absolutely. Sure, I'm doing the right thing. So our promise to you guys, the educators, the ones that we're sending over, is basically we have a great set of values here that's all based around you guys and making sure that you are getting the right experience at the right time, and that it all aligns with what you want to get out of that, whether that be, as we've already kind of spoken on as well, just making sure that it's not just about the work, but it's also about your travel and about building relationships and feeling like you have the capacity to go into a new country, into a new city, in a new school, and show them what you can do, and also bring back an amazing set of experiences and skills that you might not have otherwise had if you'd stayed at home. And that's kind of our promise, to make sure that you're getting the best and most exceptional experience you could possibly get while moving abroad. And while, if you come back, working with us too in the cities, if we have the work available, so that you can get that all-round 360 experience. So that's our promise, and we always continue to do that. And we have for the past 20 years now. So I'm sure it'll continue on far into the future.
And I think it's important, that the alignment piece too. Like, we wouldn't put you into a school that you weren't aligned with, or it just culturally wasn't a good fit for you. So we go to great lengths to make sure that the work settings that you are going out to daily, weekly, monthly, whatever, are the right ones, the ones you want, with the right types of students and the right types of teachers and resources and year levels and subjects. It's not just licorice all sorts. It's absolutely all aligned with what you want out of your working holiday adventure. Yeah. And so the whole why teach abroad, why not just stay at home in the comforts of your own town, city, country, everything. There's a whole list of reasons, but some of the main ones being personal growth. There's a lot you gain out of moving away from family and friends in a place that you're very familiar with. It makes you step out of that, comfort zone, and then develop more skills and, cultural awareness wherever it may be. You can get amongst the Aussie slang and the outback, see a few kangaroos, things like that, and experience what it's like to live in another country. I know a lot of people choose to move to Australia in particular to really get amongst the Australian lifestyle, incorporate a bit more activity and outdoors into your day-to-day life, which is a really amazing part of living in Australia. But as well as that, you're going to go and you're going to experience a lot more things that you don't, often see or hear about on the internet. And that's just from getting to know the people, the nature, the schools, the bars that you likely hang out at. Probably run into a few of your own people, whether that's Irish or British. As well as the career development. Working abroad is seen to be very beneficial to your career. A lot of schools, principals, leadership see that as a very highly regarded experience, and will really like to see what you can bring from overseas into your schools and classrooms, and teach your other colleagues as well what they might not have seen or heard of, where you're originally from. It's also very financially rewarding. These teachers in Australia get paid very well. I can speak from experience, so can Rowan. We are recognised at quite a substantial level in comparison to other countries. So it is a fantastic way to not only travel, but to save a little bit as well. When I was teaching back home, I was obviously living out of home, paying my bills, doing the rent, but I was also saving. I was also traveling. So it is, you get the whole, you're not just doing one or the other, which is fantastic. And then, of course, life experience. Your time abroad is something that you are always going to remember. It's not this fleeting, memory that you'll never talk about again. I'm sure it'll be the topic of most of your dinner parties for the rest of your life, about the time you spent maybe doing your regional farm work out in, rural Australia, or, we have people that met the love of their lives out doing things like this. It's something that you'll carry with you forever. And it could also lead to you having a friend's couch to sleep on in another country for the rest of your life. Free accommodation. So there's a lot of things to come from this, and you'll have your own personal experiences in that.
So just to speak on this as well, as I said, I have worked for ANZUK, not just as a consultant here, but also as a teacher in Melbourne. So I'm from Melbourne, Australia, grew up there, born and bred. And I was also a TA as well before I was teaching for 6 years, working with ANZUK. So I have a lot of experience and can definitely speak to it and make sure, and I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't enjoy my time working with ANZUK. The best thing about Victoria is there is always something to do. A lot of people were weighing up their options of where to go in Australia, what could be best for them. And Melbourne in particular is one of those cities where no matter what you want, you can get that, whether that's laying on a beach, going out to, nice restaurants, cafes, trying the coffee, which is world renowned in Melbourne, going to festivals at some of the best music scenes that we have in Australia is in Melbourne. We have the Australian Open there during the summer, the Grand Prix, there's endless amounts of things to do. There's the snow in the wintertime if you want to drive 4 hours up to Mount Hotham or something, or you have Bells Beach, which holds the world-renowned surfing competition, where you can see the likes of Kelly Slater and all that if you like. So there really is something for everyone, and whether that's living in a big city or a smaller coastal town, you'll get that. And that's what we're here to provide, to make sure you have the direction to what's going to best fit you.
I don't get a slide.
Yeah, you're not important. I just missed one.
Did I? Sorry.
There we go.
But so like Melbourne is where we started, so it's where most of our opportunities are going to be.
Yeah.
And that's not to discount Sydney, and it's not to discount other opportunities across the country, but by and large, we have 3 offices in Melbourne, lots more schools than anywhere else in any other state, more incentives around like a guaranteed work, more opportunity in general. Okay, so it's a big city, 5 million people, lots of private schools, public schools, independent, Catholic, single sex, co-ed, special needs. You name it, we have it. There's so many and different teams that look after different types of settings. So as Kiara talked about before, it's not just teachers we support, but teaching assistants, other supporting roles within schools. So if you're travelling with a mate that isn't a teacher but has youth-related experience, particularly with special needs, and it could be mild special needs, most likely we'll be able to get them employment as well.
So in Victoria, as I said, the state that Melbourne's in, there's 3 main or key organisations that you should know about and you need to be registered with to work. And the top one for teachers on this call would be Victorian Institute of Teaching, or VIT that we call it, and that's the Teaching Registration Authority. Without the registration there, you're not going to be able to teach there, so that means we won't be able to get you work. However, that's what my job and Rowan's job is, the global team, to make sure that you have everything you need before you arrive and that you can set up to teach as soon as you hit the ground running, which if that's what you want, you can get. And that's for the teachers. And then we have a CEQA, which is the Early Childhood Authority, and that's for self-explanatory for people that are working within early childhood education. If you were an early childhood teacher, you'd also have to apply for BIT, but we'd be able to support you with that process if you have, a what we call dual qualification as well. And then for people that are wanting to work solely in early childhood or as a TA, a teaching assistant, or an SNA, you might call them, that's when you would just need a working with children's check. And that's it's like a vetting or a DBS equivalent, and it comes back normally within a week or so. And that means that we could start sending you out to teach as a TA or an early childhood educator. Yeah, so I can tell. So VIT, as said, this allows you to teach in all school settings, excluding early childhood if you're not a teacher. And it can be done before you arrive, which is a massive deal because in comparison to other states, aka Sydney, you can't do that. So you have to wait up to 4 to 8 weeks to get it done while waiting in Australia without being able to work, essentially. So being able to teach when you arrive is really important. And it takes about 4 to 8 weeks to get done, as said, before you arrive, and is an around cost of about 176 Australian dollars, which depending on the pound or the euro, you half it into that, which is good. And it includes your working with children's check, so you don't have to do that externally to the application. You'll need to do a few things and upload a few documents in order to get this, which will talk you through the process in terms of the timing, because it is important with VIT to get the timing right of when you start the application and submit it. things like that. But just as a brief overview there, we have some of those documents, whether that be your transcripts from your degrees, your certificates, your visas, if that's important. You need a visa to be able to start your application. They need to make sure you have the right to work and live in Australia. You know, your identification documents and police certificates as such. So there is a list of things that need to be done, but that's what we do. We take the stress out of it and guide you through that from start to finish. And then obviously for early childhood, OSH, which is like before and after school care or holiday work, and also TAs, that's the working children's check. And that's, you guys are who will need that. It's very easy to get. You walk into a post office. It costs about 128 Australian bucks. And it's all the same things. You just need rights to work. So visas, identification documents. But I said, just as the other applications, we're there to help you through that whole process, hold your hand as such, and get that done. And then early childhood. So this is for early childhood. I don't know, we've had a previous webinar done on early childhood maybe a couple of weeks ago. So if you are an early childhood specific educator, you can go onto our YouTube channel and you'll see a webinar directly specifically on early childhood. But just as a brief overview on that, it's just a national framework that assesses overseas applications and degrees, and then make sure that you have the right to work in those settings in Australia. It is very different to the UK and Ireland and Europe in how you can work in settings with, you know, maybe you don't have a specific degree in it, or you have a set amount of years, things like that. Very different in Australia. In Australia, to teach, you need 4 years minimum education in tertiary, so that means university. And in early childhood, you need to have a degree in it. You can't just have experience working with kids, which may be different to what you've experienced where you're from. So that's why it's important to have a chat with us before you make the journey over, because we'll be able to really explicitly explain what your specific and personal circumstances are and what you need to do. Yeah. Do we have any questions about that in particular, just as a bit of a break? We will answer some questions later. Maybe a good time to do the poll?
Yeah, let's do that. We're just interested to know, like, when people are thinking they might make the trip.
Yeah.
And this is good. We'll share the results, because then you very well might be traveling with some of these people. They might be from your hometown or close by.
How do I share it?
It's already sharing.
Oh,
So you just need to launch it.
you're gonna have to do that. So
Right.
French polls.
Should be.
We're staring. If you see us staring up, it's because there's another bigger screen just to the left of us. Oh, we might not be able to
We
share.
might be able to.
That's
Maybe it's only on my one.
it's on your
It
computer.
might be. We can do it at the end though.
Yeah,
So don't worry.
yeah.
We will ask, because it's good to know how many people are traveling at what time of year, because we host a lot of pre-departure events in the UK and Ireland and in Scandinavia. So, and there's welcome events. If you can't make them, there's always a welcome event in Melbourne or Sydney or other states too. So you'll get to meet people, and you'll also be in a Facebook group with over 2,000 other educators that are traveling or have travelled to Australia. So you are not alone. Let's get into the good, juicy stuff about Melbourne, about how livable.
Yes, favorite part. So when you work with us as well, or travel with us, we should say, you'll get access to a whole heap of resources about living and working in Australia. One of them being area guides and that just gives you a bit of an insight to the different areas in the different suburbs around the city that you'll be living in. So that's a really fantastic resource available to you. We've spoken a little bit on the teaching opportunities in Melbourne. So as this is just a bit more in-depth detail. So for our teachers on the call, what we call CRT, you might call subbing. So this, you can see the rate there and it's a daily rate. So it's about starting at 380 Australian dollars a day. And then the higher up in experience you go, it can go up into 450 Australian dollars a day. And that is the same for early childhood teachers as well, which may also be different to the country you're used to working in as well. As Rowan had mentioned, we can offer things like guaranteed work. The best thing I loved about I worked as a CRT with ANZUK when I was back in Melbourne, was the Ready to Work app, which is basically get your own login and you make yourself as available or unavailable as possible. So you're either green or you're red, and you can work for 5 days, for weeks, months, years on end. But then you might want to take a long weekend, or you might want to go traveling for a couple of weeks up the East Coast, or drop into Bali or Thailand, the Philippines, whatever it is. And you just block it out and you just let your consultant know. And when you come back, you just let them know and they'll get you back into work. And it was just so flexible, and it's really great for you guys going over on that working holiday visa to really take that 50-50 approach of travel and working. So 10 out of 10 would recommend. And good way to build relationships and try different areas of work settings, whether that's special needs, it could be down to the demographic of the school, everything like that. You have complete flexibility, and you can, if you want consistency, it can be quite consistent as well. You end up working in the same school day in, day out, and week, month out.
Well, right, and it rolls into contract roles.
Yeah.
They'll offer you a term contract or a 2-term contract because they want continuity. So from little things, big things grow.
Exactly. So just a bit more about the temp or CRT type work. The amount of work is always dependent on your accessibility to work. So we always say it's good to live on a train line so that you can go. Melbourne's a very accessible city. There's lots of great public transport. So if you can live on or near a train line, which is very easy to do, you'll have a lot more access to work. And that can be anywhere from 30-minute travel to an hour. If you get a car, it's always a little bit easier to get to work, and Australia it's very ideal to have a car there. You don't need it, but it is good because you can do your road trips and weekends away, which Aussies do really like to do any chance they can get. Being open to special needs education is something that also will be very beneficial to yourself. It just provides more opportunity for work, as there is a lot of work in it, and it's a great thing to add to your resume and experience. As teachers, you'll know you're going to have students within your class throughout your whole teaching career that require special, support, and getting that experience casually is a really good way of gaining that insight.
Permanent opportunities. So this is anything from 6 weeks or more. So you could be at one school. We have a team of permanent opportunity team members that work with independent, Catholic and private settings, and our temp team typically work with government public settings. So that's how the divisions sort of work. So this, even if you're on a working holiday visa, do not discount working with the perm team for a 6-week to 6-month block of work, and potentially more depending on the visa. Again, lots of continuity, more responsibility, and independent schools can pay more than public schools, as an FYI as well. So we have a team member here at the moment, Stunner, in the office, who used to work in the permanent opportunities team in Australia, and she is one of her roles is to pre-place people going to Australia to get you interviews with principals before you've even left your home country. So you could have a conversation with Stunner and possibly a principal in Australia before you've even set foot on a plane, and possibly even have a job in some instances too. So that's what the perm team do. And I guess this is about Melbourne, but I grew up in central Victoria, and scale is something very different in Australia than what it is in Europe, I guess, or other parts of the world. So most people have cars, but if you're in the city, as Kiara said, public transport is really good, sometimes free, in some instances with trams, as an example. You do not need a car in Melbourne. It's only sort of on the weekends, and public transport outside of Melbourne.
Just make a friend with an Aussie that has a car, and they'll just take you anywhere you need to go.
But there's even an incentive now with the regional train network. $10 will get you anywhere in Victoria, anywhere. So it is and as Kiara said, there's lots of, the Melbourne's great, but there's also great parts of Victoria too. You've got the ocean, you've got mountains, you've got rivers, you've got lakes, you've got everything. It's pretty, you could be skiing and surfing in the same day. Literally snowboarding and surfing in the same day. It's that accessible. So we have an office, I didn't mention it earlier, but we have an office in Geelong, which is the next big city next to Melbourne. Which is a small city, but it's still a very big city. I can't remember what, maybe 700,000 people, something like that. It's
just like an hour 45 to an hour train ride out of the Melbourne CBD as well, directly.
Yeah. So I guess don't discount Geelong in this conversation. And also there's also work in places outside of Melbourne that will pay really good
money.
Relocation money too, even if you have to travel up to an hour and a half a day to get there. So
there is, and I know a lot of people online will have heard lots of different things about Australia and if there's work and where it is and is it hard to find accommodation and all these things like that. Australia has a lot of work, and that's what I'm saying. We have our cities, and a lot of and because the reason Melbourne is so good is because it's so accessible. The work might be in those suburbs, and if you just jump on a train 30, 45 to an hour, minutes, things like that, that's where all the work is. And different to some other cities and states, it's not as easy to get out to those areas, which makes it a little bit harder to get to work. So that's one of the main reasons why we love Melbourne so much, is no matter where you kind of are, as long as you got a train and a valid ticket, we can get you work, which is what is important. And there are places, like Ron said, particularly with Geelong, some of my family live in Geelong or near it, and it's really good for those people that want to kind of get the Australian experience, might not want to live in like a bigger city, but want, access to the surf, or, to a bit of a quieter lifestyle where you walk into the local supermarket with no shoes on and no one will look you up and down, which is very common in Australia, things like that. So it's a really good experience and definitely worth trying if you want to really experience, go down to where Rowan's from. There's all sorts of things happening out in the more regional parts of Victoria.
Oh, I mean, different communities, country people are typically different to city people too, But I mean, Melbourne is a very multicultural city.
Yeah.
You've got Chinatown, you've got Little Italy, as Kiara said, lots of different restaurants, different types of food from all around the world.
Yeah.
And they do it really well. Like, I really miss the food in Melbourne.
The food in Australia compared to the rest of the world is it's very top tier.
And I'm not a coffee drinker, but everyone raves about it. So I think, and you can find cheap eats, at certain nights of the week. You won't be eating carrots and living in a cardboard box.
No.
You'll be able to live where you want to live, eat where you want to eat, do all the things you want to do, work where you want to work, travel as far as you want to travel.
Yeah.
Like, it's just such an accessible city, and obviously heaps of different opportunities that we've talked about, some already: early childhood teaching, support staff, after school care. So that happens during the term breaks. If you wanted to work and you had an early childhood qualification, it's only closed 2 weeks of the year, early childhood. So you can actually work up, if you wanted to, over the holiday periods.
Yep.
And if you're looking at leadership, Stunner and the team she used to work with, they look at leadership opportunities for, you might be a very experienced educator that wants responsibility, so we can look at that as well.
Yeah.
There's Kiara.
Oh, there I am at one of our events. Back in February, I went back home, so I got to meet some of the educators like yourselves that I sent over the past year. But one of the big standout things about ANZ UK would be, I think personally, our events. We're a very community-based company or agency. We really understand what it's like to be a travelling educator. As Rowan said previously, a lot of the people that work within this agency have experienced what it's like to live abroad, have taught themselves and now taught abroad. So we get what it's like to move overseas and maybe not know as many people, feel a bit out of place in a city, not know where to go eat or hang out. And so we put together these events, and we like to do them before you leave, so the pre-departure events. And as Rowan said, if you miss out on these, we do then arrival or welcome events. And these are free to you guys. There's always a bar tab on. There's always some type of activity. The one that I was at there in that photo was lawn bowls down at St Kilda Beach in Melbourne. It was such a nice day. You can see the sun shining in our eyes there. And it was just such a great day. And, that was just a last minute event. I think we had 50 people there that have all travelled from overseas. And it was so nice to see people engage with one another, make friends. People might, that could be a future housemate, a travel buddy. A lot of these people travel on the train and public transport together to work, because a lot of the times we can send multiple teachers to the same school, and that's a really good way to network and make friends, and not just colleagues, but actually people that you're going to spend time with outside of your work hours, and make your experience abroad even that much better. So the events are fantastic. They're always a good time. Always would recommend you guys coming along. And as well as the events that we do, we also have Facebook groups. So you'll get access to this Facebook group once you've spoken with us. And it's a good way to, we have people posting there, just landed in Melbourne, looking to go for a walk or grab a coffee or dinner with someone. Is anyone else around? And people will be like, yeah, I just got here too. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. Really good way to meet people. So if you are a bit nervous and anxious about the whole journey and doing it by yourself, or even in a group, but you still want to meet new people, we got a lot of opportunity for that and would absolutely recommend them.
Yeah, you might find a housemate or a travel buddy or a partner.
Yeah.
You never know. It's a growing community, and as I said before, it's people that are going to Australia, that are already in Australia working with ANZ UK,
Yes.
and some that have moved on, returned home, or moved to a different, maybe a different country where we're based as well. So ask questions, ask for advice. Like, where are the best places to live? Where are the best places to eat?
Yeah.
We in the area guide piece before, there's probably only a couple of places we'd say don't live.
And I can speak on that, and that's St Kilda, where that event was. But Melbourne in itself is such a, and you might be thinking, oh my God, because if you're Irish on this call, I know a lot of you will have heard of St Kilda in Melbourne. St Kilda's a very small area on the beach in Melbourne, and it's where a lot of the Irish pubs are, a lot of restaurants, a lot of bars. But Melbourne's, as we were saying and have harped on a bit about, it's so accessible. So you can live on the borders of these places and still access them very easily, but have better access to work, as I like to say. But we will speak with you in detail about, based on what type of work you want. Not everyone wants 5 days a week. Some people don't want any less than that. So we'll be able to give you advice on where's best then to live or to look for accommodation based on what you're wanting to get out of your time in Melbourne. But as I like to say, you don't have to live in the party to be invited to it, which is St Kilda in itself. So there's a few places like that would you say any other places?
I mean, I lived there for 10 years in St Kilda, and I loved it, but
I had a car.
But it's like the example of you on the Sydney webinar the other day. It's like, don't live in Bondi, don't live in Coogee. Yes, that's all everyone ever talks about, but it's much more competitive to find affordable housing.
Yeah.
And then you'll probably have to commute further to get to schools and get to work regularly.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what you're after. Like, we're not saying don't live there, but just really think about what you want to get out of your
time.
Yeah, and how much you want to pay for your rent and things like that too, because
you can live 10 minutes up the
road. There's so many other places that are just as good or better. So, like, I would always say, when you get to Melbourne or you get to Sydney or wherever you're going to go, get into that Airbnb for a week or two, get your travel card, and get out there and just look around and go like, could I live here? Could I live there? No, I don't want to live there.
Yeah.
Has that got gyms? Has that got green spaces, public transport?
Yeah. What's the schools like?
Yes, shops, like restaurants. Has it got everything I want? Because maybe St Kilda isn't for you. Maybe Elwood or Caulfield or
South Melbourne, Richmond, North Melbourne, another personal favourite that you might not have heard about. But definitely don't panic about the accommodation side of things, especially with the pre-planning of accommodation. As Rowan said, get an Airbnb, get settled, explore, and then make choices. You don't want to lock yourself in before you arrive to somewhere you've never been and then realise that is not the place for you, but you've signed a lease. So as I've sent a lot of educators to Australia and Melbourne over the past year, no one's emailed me or called me being like, I'm going home because I can't find accommodation. So you will be fine. And we'll make sure you're aware of everything you need to know before you go, which leads into the whole process, how we work, what we do, why we do it. So the process with ANZ UK or the global team and then the Australian team is once you've registered interest, whether that be through our website, it might be after this webinar, you'll get some links to book in some calls with either myself or, it could be some of the other team members like Stana we were talking about in our team. And you'll have that initial contact or that initial call. And we'll talk to you about the when, the where, the how, and really get into that about your experience, what your qualifications are, if they align with the Australian teaching expectations, things like that, and if you can work in Australia. So we start off on the right track there. Once you have your flights and your visas and you're 100% going and it's not the and ahhing anymore, you're like, nah, Kara, I've booked my flights, I got my tickets, we're going. That's when we then, before you arrive, we'll get you in contact with the team member in the city in which you're going to. So in this case, Melbourne. And they'll have a call with you before you arrive. They'll set that up online. There might be some time zone things, so it might be a few late night or early morning calls, but it's all worth it for that peace of mind before you arrive. And they'll talk to you about what will happen once you arrive. They'll book in some times for you to go into the office, meet the team, get a nice lanyard. If you're nice, you might even get a coffee. And then what we do as well before that is the compliance. So making sure you have your references done and that, so that you can actually go and work in the schools. So it really is that whole like 360 full rounded experience of support that you get from us. And then once all of that stuff done, so all the compliance checks out, you've spoken to a team member, you got all your tickets and visas, we can then finalize the registration. So that means that, you know, you have everything. You can go into the office, make sure that you might do it. They literally just like to see that you're a real person after you've sent off your identification documents, make sure it matches up. And then they'll send you out and then you're cleared for work and you're in the classroom just like that. If, like I said, Melbourne's one of the best. You can start teaching as soon as you arrive. So if you're on it, you can start working 1-2 days after you get there.
Getting paid weekly.
Yeah.
Good money.
Yeah.
You'll have a superannuation,
Yeah.
plan as well.
Yep.
You have to pay tax, but you'll get some of that back when you do leave.
You do get your tax back in Australia. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And then I guess I want to leave some time for questions, but like there's lots of things, as we said, outside of finding you the job, finding you the work, that we're going to be helping you with. It's going to be, we can't give you expert advice on visas when allowed to, but we have someone who can. So if you have a tricky visa you want to apply for, you're not sure, we can put you in touch with Darren at Visa Go and he can help you with that. We did a webinar. We can send you the recording around that too, looking at skilled visas or sponsorship or whatever it might be. Obviously we've got teams that are all around the world, so it doesn't have to be Australia where you stop. You can continue on to the UK or New Zealand or wherever it might be. And also, Sydney, we could almost have a webinar called Sydney versus Melbourne, which would be very, very politically incorrect. And I've lived in Sydney myself too, but there's nothing to stop you from working in Melbourne and Sydney. Yeah. And possibly other states and New Zealand. Like there's nothing to stop you doing that. You can get mutual recognition on your teaching registration across all the states in Australia. If you've got VIT, you'll be recognised in other states as well. It's a good place to start before New South Wales, because you already have the registration rather than just arriving in New South Wales and waiting 10 weeks to get it. Yeah. So, it's really easy to transfer from state to state. Curriculum's the same, pay rates are the same, opportunities might be different because of, as I said, Melbourne is our sort of headquarters, but nothing to stop you considering that. So, I guess it's just about sitting down with one of us and having that conversation around, look, I initially said Sydney. I have mates going there and they're living in Bondi already. But now I know about Nessa and having to wait 10 weeks. And now I know about there's less opportunities in Sydney. Maybe I'll start in Melbourne, Kiara. You've really convinced me to really think about that. Yep. So I'll do 10 weeks in Melbourne one term and then I'll go to Sydney and live it up with my mates there too, or vice versa. Absolutely. So there's no one way to do this. You could spend the whole 12 months in Melbourne, or you could move on to wherever depending on your visas. But we've got heaps of blogs and heaps of other educators we can put you in touch with. To you don't have to hear it from us. You can hear it from them. Doesn't have don't take our word for it. Exactly. So just a few things to touch on. What to remember about when thinking about all of this is the reason why it's so important to speak with us before you go, because we have a lot of people that try and do it on their own, which is very admirable, but it can be very difficult for yourselves, is, we'll help you with getting the documents prepared before you depart, making sure it's all submitted. We'll help you think of a timeline of when as well to do your, what shouldn't be called farm work, but your 88 days of regional work, because it's tourism, hospitality, and farming now. And that's for our Irish educators and European or Canadian, basically non-Britain people or passport holders. You still have to do your 88 days of regional work, but hey, it's an experience and you should embrace it.
and we'll help you with the research that we spoke on about where you're going, where to live, everything like that. We have some more webinars coming up on teaching in special needs within Australia as well, which I personally have done myself as a secondary teacher. I also worked in a special needs school. So we'll be able to, we have a lot of experience and a lot of information to share with you guys.
There's one on specified work too, the do's and don'ts
of
getting your 88 days. So
very
I'm hoping to have an educator who's currently doing that or has finished it to jump on and co-host that webinar so you can ask questions. But speaking of questions, we want to hear from some of your questions. We want to answer them now. So some of you been typing furiously into the chat room, which is great.
Yeah. With so some of the questions are about applying and Australian phone numbers and documents that you'll need when applying. The great thing, as we said about Melbourne, is you kind of, with other states, you need to have Australian addresses, phone numbers as such to apply to teach. Whereas with Melbourne, you don't, as we've said. So if you need to put, sometimes you need an Australian address in the application for VIT. You can use our work office address, and that's just where your VIT card gets sent. So we'll just give that to you in your registration when you come into the office, which is why Melbourne is so easy, because you don't need to worry about all those things, and that before you get there, you can just slide on in as easily as possible.
Yeah.
The how soon before should you be applying for VIT, and is there a too early time to be applying for it? Yes, there is a too early time, and there is a certain time frame you should be following, because they can reject it if it's too early, which is why we can help you with that and make sure that you fit it into the timeline right. There's a few things about police checks and how recent they are. It does have to be about 7 days recent when you submit it. So you have to kind of get a really nice balance of normally about 2 months before you arrive of starting to do the applications. But as said, that's our job, to keep you on track and to keep you aligned with that and make sure that when you arrive in, it is all done, given you've done all the right things. So we can go into more detail and depth of that in the calls that you have with us as well. Just looking through the questions here. So working with Children's Check, you do need to be in Australia to apply for that, unlike the Victorian teaching, like the VIT registration. But as I said, it takes about 2 weeks to come back. So it gives you a good time to settle in and get comfortable in your new city before heading out into work, if that's the case.
Superannuation, it's a pension plan. So you're going to get, I think that was the question, was it?
Yeah, what, like superannuation? So
that was what I can't see now. It's gone past it. But
what is superannuation?
Yeah, it's a pension plan. So as an employer, every employer in Australia has to submit contribute 11% of your weekly earnings into your pension plan. Okay, so it's locked away for you when you retire. So it's typically Australians, but when working holiday visa holders finish their time in Australia, they get access to some of it. They don't get all of it, they get access to some of it. So you'll take some more money home with you when the time comes to finish up in Australia. And as well as you'll submit a tax return.
Yeah. There's a few other things. Oh God, this mouse on this thing is, in terms of the curriculum, and before you go and should you look it up, you can. It's a very transferable curriculum from UK, European, Irish to Australian. I think you won't find too much trouble with it. If you do want to look it up before, you can go onto our blogs. We have a lot of information about transferring your knowledge into the Australian curriculum. And you can always just Google the Victorian curriculum online, and you can look through the whole years from prep, which is the first year of school, all the way up into year 12, and what they teach in schools in Australia and how that aligns back home for yourself so that you can be prepared when you get there. But you will get a lot of help from your team or your consultant when you arrive to make sure that you're prepared when you're going into schools.
Yeah, and typically the work, if you're doing CRT, substitute teaching, the work will be left for you.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're just delivering the work and you're collecting the work and you're leaving the room as you found it. So it's not no extracurricular involvement, no marking, no assessment, no staff meetings.
3:30.
Yeah, and that's one of the real pros of CRT. So in saying that, I'd still say have a little bag of tricks.
Yeah.
Few icebreakers and get to know you type games that you can just get in there at the start, first 5 minutes, set up the lesson, get the kids to know a bit about you, learn a bit about them. Always have something in your back pocket. There might be a disorganized teacher 1 out of 10 times where you can just go, That's all right. I did a lesson on algebra in the UK or in Ireland. I can just easily do that here. So it's all transferable. So don't, it's all online now. I remember back in the days you had papers and books and resources and stuff, and 23 kilograms is all you're going to get to carry to Australia. So make sure you put everything up into a cloud.
You go with Southern China Airlines, you get two free 23 kilos. Southern China. I flew with them and I survived the journey, so I can vouch for it.
Never been the same since.
A really good question as well that we have in here. We won't get to go through all of them, but the recommendations of where to book an Airbnb when you first get there. Honestly, the best place that we recommend, or places, is central in Melbourne. So Richmond, South Yarra, maybe even Collingwood. The reason for that is because they're really central. They're close to, the train lines, and you can get basically any direction that you need to go while you're traveling, or while you're trying to figure out the city that you're living in. And that way you can have your nights out or your dinners, drinks, coffees, things, and try different areas, and then set yourself up really nicely so that when you do know where you want to live, you can start really exploring that area as well. Rowan is just sharing a few polls as well to help you guys, to help us understand when you guys are looking in.
So just I'll give you 10 seconds just to tick a box. You can do whatever you want. If you're unsure,
sharing.
I can stop sharing too. Just see us.
Yeah, exactly. See themselves on screen.
So we'll give you 5 more seconds just to submit your answers.
Nice. All right. Those 3 to 6 months, if you haven't booked in a call yet, make sure you do after this call. We're going to be sending out an email that has a link to a few of the team members in the team, so you can book in a call, and there's a lot of opportunity for you to find a time that suits you best. And just want to make an emphasis on the fact that we are a completely free service. We do not charge at any point throughout the process, even once working with us. So know that you can book in a call with peace of mind that we're not going to jump out with any scary bills at any point.
No, not at all. And I think judging by the poll results, we've got nearly 20% of people on the call are arriving or plan to arrive in the next 3 months, the next 90 days, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Nearly 40% within the next 3 to 6 months, 25% within the second or the 6 to 12 month period. And then there's about 15% that still are unsure.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Hopefully you can go away a bit more informed after this webinar and make and that's when we'll have a conversation with you about when is the busy times to get work in Melbourne, or in Australia in general. If you want to work when you first arrive, is it better to arrive in summer? Is it better to arrive in winter? I want to enjoy the summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Then I want to go to Australia. We'll talk you through all the do's and don'ts. And there's a blog we wrote about best times to arrive in Australia too, for permanent opportunities, for contract opportunities, for casual work as well. So
there's a lot to be covered that can't be unfortunately done in the space of 45 minutes or an hour here, but that's why it's important to, book in those calls and have those chats and start getting those, the cogs turning,
Yeah. So the call to action for us is we're going to send you a follow-up email, and it's going to have a link to our individual teams bookings links, so you can actually schedule time with Kiara, with other members of the team, and unpack at a time that suits you and unpack your specific journey. So and the video recording will come up with that. I'll put the Sydney one in, and I might chuck another the webinar visa one in as well. The last couple of things I want to say are, if you are in the UK or in Ireland, and I know many of you aren't, you're in other places, which is fine too. We have teams in Canada and New Zealand and all over, and I look after educators in the UAE as an example. But we are hosting events across Ireland and the UK between now and the end of June with Caroline McKenna, and it's a great opportunity to meet us in person. There's 10 or 8 events left remaining, and so we can send you the link tree in that follow-up email as well, and you can register for that as well. It's another really good opportunity to meet with other travelling educators too. But my final passing comment is going to be what it always is. For all those fence sitters out there, grab the bull by the horns. Like, do this. Don't let it pass you. I had friends that always said, "Oh, I'll travel, I'll travel, I'll go to the UK, I'll do this, I'll do that," and they never did. They went as tourists, which is totally different to working in a different country.
Yeah.
And because they got comfortable with life, they got comfortable with promotions and got a mortgage and got a kid and just all these things that stopped them, prevented them from going and doing this amazing experience. Yes, and Australia is so user friendly. You know, so user friendly. Like camper vans, travel. You know, caravan parks. It's set up for the working holiday maker and anyone who wants to relocate there permanently. So please, do this sooner rather than later. Don't put it on the back burner. There's a huge shortage of educators in Australia, despite what you're hearing. It's just certain places we're saying don't live. Okay.
Yeah, don't stroke the broad brush of all of Australia just because you can't get your house in Bondi Beach or St Kilda.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Your passing comments?
Honestly, it's very much of this. It's the same thing, you guys. It's you regret the things that you thought about, and if it was ever a passing thought, you're going to remember it and you're going to think about it for years on years and years to come. And you never want to resent a decision you didn't do. And for all of you that are also nervous of going, like, I don't know if Australia is for me. I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it. The worst thing that can happen is you don't like it and you come home. That is honestly, that's it. It's never that serious, or it's not going to ruin your life getting on a plane, checking it out. And 99% of the time you will stay and you will love it. And if you didn't, at least you knew what was right for you and what wasn't, and you were never left guessing, which will kill you over time, wondering if it was going to be the thing that changed your life and was an experience that could have,
you'll love it.
You will. Exactly.
So, I was going to show a little video, but there was so many on Melbourne. I just did YouTube. I just did like highlights of Melbourne. There's so many out there, like funky things that reminded me of the funky laneways with the graffiti and but just the cool parts of Melbourne that I'd forgotten about that I will go back to when I visit at Christmas time. But maybe you could be there for Christmas, having your first hot, warm, summery Christmas. Santa still comes to us in Australia, so
we do barbecues and beach days for Christmas, so it's a nice different experience than what you get over here, that's for sure.
But enjoy the Northern Hemisphere summer. I'm sure it'll be a great one. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you again for your time. Thank you, Kiara. We're looking forward to having a conversation with you one-on-one and hopefully meeting some of you in person and getting you down under on that big tin bird soon. Okay?
Awesome.
Have a great evening, everybody.
See you.
Speak to you soon. Bye.